that's the opening from my favorite Final Fantasy. I don't know if we can play that legally, but I thought if I played it on guitar, we might get away with it. Anyways, mine's Miles Greb, and I mostly write comics and talk about science, but if you can follow me on Twitter or know anything about the stuff I write, I really love Final Fantasy. I've loved it since I was a little kid, and it's just a lot more important to me than any video game I've ever played. I mean, there's lots of fun games out there. I love playing Mega Man. I even love playing silly stuff like Madden, but nothing's really kind of impacted me like Final Fantasy. The closest thing to it, like media-wise in my life, would be like Lord of the Rings, which I grew up believing was true, which is a whole nother story, or Frank Herbert's Dune. But Final Fantasy stands alone for video games, and it all started with Final Fantasy 1, which came out the year I was born, but I, didn't quite have the cognitive faculties to play it. But I got a NES from mowing lawns when I was like 4 or 5, and I got to play it for the first time. I didn't quite like it as much as Dragon Warrior when I first played it. I thought Dragon Warrior was a little easier to kind of understand and play. I was a child, but I always really liked how big it felt, and the cast of characters and the music. And so later, when Final Fantasy 4, it was called 2 initially in America. But I knew it as 4 even when it first came out because my friend's older sister was older, and so therefore more fluent in the ways of nerddom than I was. She knew the other secret Japanese Final Fantasies, and she informed me, so I was one of the cool kids. 4 was amazing. It was different than any game I've ever played before because it wasn't just, you're the adventurer, you're going out there and kicking ass and teaching dragons about mortality. It was an ethical game. It was an emotional game. The main character, Cecil, this little guy right here, he has to go through a journey where he finds out he's wrong. He has to find out that his king is wrong and everything he stood by and learned his whole life was wrong. And, it's not the most, brilliant story of all time, but we'd never seen it in a video game before. And there was something so powerful about these early games growing up. I mean, you just had so much. I love Fantastic Four. I love Spider-Man. I read those growing up, and those stories I don't feel like I was a part of. It was more like what is going on there, and you want to learn. When you play a video game, you feel more in control, so you feel more in the world. So having that kind of story in a game it was really different for me. And so I played other games and read other books and went on, but then we saw this game. We saw it in Nintendo Power, and and we knew that it was coming out, and man, I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I got a Sega Genesis, but my friend Ryan Ware, he had a Super Nintendo, and I would go up to his house every chance I could, and more chances than I should have, if I cared about my grades, which I don't regret. I don't regret at all, because I got to play Final Fantasy VI. Like I said, 3 in America, but we knew, thanks to his older sister, that it was 6. And the thing about 6 was, this is the point when I think games changed. This game, above all other games, this is like the high watermark. I think this is like the Citizen Kane of video games. Because we had wonderful game design, Super Mario Bros. 3, Mega Man 2, Castlevania, some fantastic games that came out, but I don't think games really started to fully be an art medium. Obviously, there was elements of there. I'm not saying there's not, but fully let's make an artistic piece in total until Final Fantasy VI came out. Now, 6 tells the story of this steampunk world where magic used to be the core of everything. There was a race of magical beings called Espers, and they dominated the world. But mankind abused them, and with their greed and malice, destroyed everything that was pure about them, and the two were shut off, and magic was removed from the world. But by chance, the Emperor has reclaimed some of this magical power and has started infusing it in their generals, like Celeste, who is on my shirt here, or Terra, who isn't present, but I played her intro song, so she's with us in this moment. And you find out that Terra, who eventually leaves the Emperor and comes, with the good guys, the rebels. She finds out about her past and everything. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole point of the game. The point is, if you like video games and you can handle a turn-based combat system and you haven't played this, you've so far in your life made a huge mistake. But guess what? That's okay, because you can get this game on tons of systems and you really should. So Final Fantasy VI is amazing. From the opera scene to the Phantom Train to the fact that you don't win. Think about that. I won't tell you everything happens, but you don't win in this game. So I don't. This video is supposed to be about Final Fantasy 15 and knocking stuff down because Final Fantasy 6, like I said, is very powerful game. So I'm not going to keep going on about it. But then, I'm sure everybody knows, even non-RPG fans know about this one. Final Fantasy VII. Now, this game was the big breakthrough hit. This was like the Green Day of JRPGs. So, non-punk fans found Green Day like Green Day, or, I guess that Run DMC Aerosmith album made hip-hop more mainstream. This is the thing that made JRPGs more mainstream in the West. Dragon War is a huge franchise in Japan, but they never could quite break through, even with these wonderful games, to the big hit. But Seven had the advertising campaign. 7 was like the Acura of JRPG. 7 had this cyberpunk 3D look that had so many technical masterpieces to put this game together. People couldn't even fucking handle how good Final Fantasy 7 is. I can't even handle how good Final Fantasy 7 is. Now, I don't think it's quite as good as 6 because, like I said, 6 is like the Citizen Kane of video gaming. But this is just right with there. Like, you can get me on a day where I'll say it's better than 6 if I'm listening to the music enough. It is Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, and a wonderful person who lost his job because he made a movie that didn't make much money, even though he made most of the best games ever. He really just nailed this. Him and Namru and Abitsu, the orchestrator, this game is inarguably the greatest moment in video game history. Some of the most beautiful music and settings. Just this world that is just ripe for pillaging a little bit with what they're doing with some of the spin-offs. But this is a game that sticks with everybody. And then 8 happened, and whatever. And then there's Final Fantasy 9 over here, which I love 9. I adore 9. I typically rank it a little lower when I'm trying to be objective despite my emotions for the game, mostly because it's a very derivative game. With 8, we went kind of like more emotional college soap opera thing, whatever it was supposed to be. 6 was like steampunky, and we had cyberpunk with 7. But 9 was remember how things used to be when we were just in the fields with the high fantasy, and 9 brought us back to that. So it's very derivative. It's a lot of fan service, but it's still a beautiful game. It's not uncreative in the way they tell the story and the characters. It's just a lot of the stuff is typical Final Fantasy stuff. It's a great one to start with, and it's a great one for fans of the franchise. Like I said, it's just not quite the high watermark of the series for reasons I said, but it's still a beautiful game I definitely check out. And so after 9 came out, we had the PlayStation 2, which my dad was awesome and got me for Christmas, even though they were sold out in that big blue box. I was so excited. We got to play 10. This is one of the first images we ever saw for 10. And, it was this water world, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a giant water world, much better than the Kevin Costner movie, Water World. I like that movie, but that's not the point. The point is that this game is awesome. There's something about being the first game on a new system because Square cares so much about the way things look, and they make things much more beautiful and in-depth than most other games can because they care to make a whole new world more than just to make a game. And Final Fantasy X was fantastic. It's a very anti-religious game. It's kind of like this strictly anti-Catholic kind of crusade where these summoners, Yuna, for example, she's like a Shinto kind of style character. She has to go and defeat sin, and then she has to die for her. And Titus is like, fuck that, that's terrible. We're not allowed to do this anymore, but I love you, so I'll protect you. And he's like a ghost dream from the future. It doesn't matter. But it's a fantastic game, beautiful, great combat, tons of extra stuff you can do if you're grindy. And that was a great game. I just spent all summer playing this. We'd walk up to the corner store in 100-degree California weather, get Slurpees, come back, play this, ran out of Slurpee, go get more Slurpee. That was great. And then I won't talk about these games too much because they were Moe's, but there's Final Fantasy XI, which I played for about 400 hours until my stepbrother stole my account and sold it to Japanese gill sellers. So, that wasn't great. But, yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about 11 because I'll start crying. But goddamn. Yeah. Okay. 12. 12 is set in my favorite Final Fantasy world, Ivalice. it's created by one of my favorite artists of all time, Yoshida, who made my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. Although I'm not saying it's the best, I think 6 is the best, but I'm playing Tactics as much as I can. These two games are both set in Ivalice. It's a bit more sophisticated and kind of like, here's the thing about 12 and Ivalice. These games have beautiful dialogue, absolutely wonderful setting. It's a very serious, almost Lord of the Rings setting where everything has like this depth to it, and kind of this unexplored character. These games are a bit more sophisticated, and there's a lot of complex gameplay in them and stuff, and so that's why I normally rate them when I'm trying to be more objective to the other series, but they hold a great place in my heart, and Tactics especially, Tactics is like, if you're familiar with War of the Roses, it's like War of the Roses fan fiction. It's a lot of anti-religious, anti-authority stuff in the game. It's about a hero who was the real cause for this major change in the world, but his friend who grew up poor is the one who history remembers because that's a better narrative. So that kind of has like a skeptical historian approach to it as well. So it really hits me on everything I care about. And if you like tactical-based grid games and or care about grinding a little bit, please play Tactics. So that brings us next to 13, which was a divisive game. I like 13. I think it has lovely music and a great central narrative. Unfortunately, because the game went multi-platform and one of the platforms couldn't fit all the game, they had to cut it down, which means they lost some information, so the narrative lacked a bit. They tried to make it more linear and a little simpler in the beginning, mostly because, like I said, it was on another platform other than PlayStation, so they were trying to kind of teach those fans about JRPGs, kind of like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was for Super Nintendo, where they're like, okay, kids, come play these games. You know, it's not like Mega Man, but it's still cool, I promise. So I like 13. I think it's an imperfect game, unfortunately, but Lightning Story and Snow and Fanil and Fango, they're all great characters. Some really great cutscenes, so is it to the high watermark? Is it 7, 6, or 10? No, it's not, but it's still a good game. I think it gets criticized more than it should, basically because it took a while to come out. Like I said, you had a bunch of fans from a non-typical JRPG platform who played it and was like, what's this? This isn't Call of Duty, and, you know, it's unfortunate, because it is a good game. And so then we had the second Mo come out, which initially bombed and was terrible. Even total fanboys like me couldn't like it, but it was saved by Yoshi. He came in, not from Mario, different guy. He came in and changed the game around and made it quite good. I don't think it's as good as 11, because 11's like the wilderness of Mo's, and like required so much from the players. Like you had to learn teamwork, and it built all these like friendships and these deep, rewarding moments. Where 14's more get in, do a dungeon, get out with people you don't know. And although it's very Final Fantasy, it's very fun. It's not quite to the extent of 11. And then at E3, when I was in high school, it's jumping back a little bit from when the other games came out. When 13 first came out, they told us 13's coming out. But wait, 13 Versus is coming out. We're like, we don't know what that means, Square. They're like, it doesn't matter if you know what it means. This game's awesome. There's this guy, his name's Noctis, he's walking down these stairs, people shooting at him, you know, he's on his throne, he's very serious, and he's like, I don't give a fuck about bullets. I just came off the throne. He got swirling swords around him, they're like, and there's this music playing, and we're like, holy fuck, do we gotta play this game. And so we bought PlayStation 3s, and we're like, fucking doing it, everybody. We got out of high school, we got jobs, we got girlfriends, our girlfriends left us, we got fired from our jobs, got new girlfriends, moved away, PlayStation 4 came out, still don't have Final Fantasy 15. It's never gonna happen. You know, Kingdom Hearts 3 isn't out, 13 was pretty good, we're playing 14, we're liking it, not loving it, but it's good. People are bashing Square, people saying Square's done, it's over, 7, 6, it's over. You know, Tactics got a couple spin-offs, but they were kind of kiddie, and they were decent, but they weren't great. And everyone's like, it's just not going to happen. And then a couple years ago at E3, they showed us a new trailer. And, you know, Namri was out there, and they were like, hey, 13 Versus is 15 now. And we're like, fucking okay. All right, man, let's do this. Like, it's going to take a little bit. Well, we've got a new team on this game, go a new direction. We're like, we like the old direction, but we like Final Fantasy, so we trust you. And so finally, it was on the way. And now, earlier this year, 15 came out. Let me move some of this stuff. I'm gonna show you. Hello, Final Fantasy IV. No events, my friend. Cecil the Paladin. Final Fantasy I. It's a really cool map in here. Tom Berry. We got, boom, Final Fantasy 15. 10 years we waited for this. It wasn't technically in development for 10 years. It's a bit of a misnomer. But we waited for 10 years, so what do we care? We don't care at all. This game finally came out. It was different. It was different than the other Final Fantasies. It's an action game. It's more like Kingdom Hearts, you know? You don't have the da-da-da-da-da-da, click the menu, kind of blue-white menu that we had on the old games. It didn't have that. You're running around, you're in the woods, you're jumping. It was awesome. It's different, but Final Fantasy, everyone wants to define it a different way. This is what Final Fantasy is. Final Fantasy is innovation with tradition. It is the mirroring of those things with a bunch of different like memes and characters that are reoccurring in it. And some people were a little disappointed that 15 was such a different combat system, but that's what Final Fantasy does. Final Fantasy gives us something new, but this game still feels so much like a Final Fantasy game, and I've beaten it now. I've almost got the platinum. I wanted to play it a lot before I talked about it. A lot of people made videos right after it came out, but I don't like that. You know, I don't want to watch an hour and a half of a movie, and when it's a 3-hour movie, and just come in my review. Like, I want to give it its credit, but this game is really good. I think this is one of their better games. It's a very emotional game. It does miss a few parts of the story here and there, and the old games would have been longer. But here's the thing with 15. We waited so long for it, and you play the story of Noctis, who his father knows what's going to happen to him, and so he forces him out of the kingdom to go to meet who he's betrothed, who he's engaged to. And he goes on this journey through the woods, and you find out that your kingdom has fallen when you're gone, and you're with your friends Ignis and Prompto and GLaDOS. And here's the thing, like, there's not a lot of games that are about like males talking about their feelings and being so open with each other, and 15 does that. The other Final Fantasy games don't do that to this extent. In fact, I don't really know of a game that does, and it's not really popular in popular media for that to happen. And 15 does that. And since like I grew up waiting for this game with my friends, like right after high school when we were all living together, it was just so great to kind of have that, because like there's so much camaraderie and fraternity in this game. I think it's really beautiful, and I think it's important socially to have that with a game with 4 male leads. And the ending it's just really beautiful, because there's something in this logo right here. Probably might not be able to see that because of the flashy thing, but that logo we saw 10 years ago when Versus came out. We saw it, and it's Almanos Art, the lead concept guy for Final Fantasy, and there's a secret in it, and we didn't know that secret. And then you beat the game, and like we finally hear the theme music for Noctis play, and we learn the secret about that, and it was just like this fulfilling moment that we've been waiting for 10 years. And it was kind of like seeing Luke at the end of Episode 7, you know. I've been waiting to see what happened to Luke after Return of the Jedi for all my life. I've read all the EU books, and, you know, they took that story away from me, and I didn't have anything. And seeing Luke, it was very powerful. So seeing the ending of this game, it was really beautiful. And I think 15 is a great game. I'm very happy with it. Like I said, that it doesn't quite have the narrative power of 7 or 6 or Tactics or even 10. But that's okay. It doesn't have to. I mean, like, one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies is A Serious Man, and A Serious Man isn't like just this narrative-heavy story. It's about characters and feelings and a lot of ideas. And 15 is about that. 15 is, like I said, it's about fraternity. And what other game is like that? So is 15 a success? I think it is. If I was to rank it, to be fair, I would of course put 6 first. I think this is, you know, one of the high marks of video game history. And then after that, I would go with Final Fantasy VII. And then I think it's fair to put Cecil's Final Fantasy IV next. Good old Cecil, since I have a statue. So I think those are our 3 main games. I think anyone who is trying to be objective and base, you know, this on any kind of paradigm at all has to put these 3 first. You know, I wouldn't be mad if somebody switched these 2, but I think 6 is the greater game. Right after these, I would go with Final Fantasy X for being so innovative, and powerful, and it's still great to this day. They just released an HD version, and people still play and love it. I replayed it, and it was still fantastic. Then right after 10, I think it's close. We're going to get some DLC for 15. So they're going to add a little bit of story stuff, some new bosses. So I think it could surpass this. But I would, for now, put 9 next. Just, although 9, like I said, is derivative, there's so many great stories. Vivi's story is fantastic. Beatrix, one of the side characters, is wonderful. There's so many little jokes, like the Moogle's in there. 9 is just a great love letter to a lot of the older Final Fantasy games. So I put 9 probably next. But then, yeah, 15. I got the big fancy box version. And, you know, the Amino cover. And, yeah, 15's fantastic. You know, I posted a listing of the other rankings you want to know. But mostly, I just wanted to say that I'm very thankful that Square put so much effort into 15 and was able to get it done. Because we waited a long time, and like I said, no other games really do what Final Fantasy does, and it just mattered a lot to me that they cared to put the effort into it and make a proper Final Fantasy game. What we'll see in the future, I don't know what we'll see from 16. They're remaking 7, so that should be cool. It's going to be combat like 15 more, and that's fine. You know, I kind of am sad that we have to appeal to the broader audience more and we can't get turn-based, but I don't regret that we have to so much. It's fine. I do enjoy it, and it was great for 15. I hope one day we can get a turn-based again, but I am excited for what's going to come, and I trust Square now to get back on the track and to make wonderful games like they used to. And thanks for watching the video. I'm sorry it's not as fancy as a lot of other people's YouTube videos with jump cuts and little graphic squares like this or core filters, but I make comic books and talk about science. I just love Final Fantasy, and I wanted to talk about it with you guys, so thanks for tuning in or watching the video. I don't know. How do you end a video? End the video, Drew. Click end. Now turn it off. Drew, turn it off.